For being here this evening. I hope you enjoy all of the wonderful information Michelle has to offer us. So go ahead, Michelle, take it away.
Okay, so we got it. Great. I just had to click on the got it. All right. Well, good evening and welcome everybody. It's a pleasure to be here this evening with you again and to be with a Whole Foods co-op class. It's one of my favorite to do. And though we are still virtual, I'm glad that we can do it this way because we're reaching a lot more people. So there are benefits to doing it this way, and happy that you can all join us this evening. Again, my name is Michelle, and I am a certified holistic health practitioner in the Duluth area. I practice complementary and integrative healthcare, and I've been doing this for nearly 12 years now. And I practice in things like nutritional and health and wellness coaching, and I do energy-based therapy and other integrative therapies. These are some of the things that I do. And this evening, we are going to be talking about something that seems to be a very popular topic, something that comes up a lot. And I think just because of the fact that it has to do with how we really feel our health and how it's affected by this. And that is the topic of the brain-gut connection and our health and well-being. So we'll get started right away. And I'm going to go ahead and let me see how I work this here. Okay, when I do the share, get started with talking about wellness. We're talking about health and well-being and optimum health. What does that mean? Well, one of the things that we talk about is health is so much more than the absence of disease. So having health and wellness is really about feeling good and not just the absence of disease. Wellness like vitality, joy, fulfillment, resilience. These are things that are wellness. And if we don't have this, then we're in dis-ease and we don't feel well. And we're on that search for wellness. And if you think about it, really, how many of us have true wellness every day where we feel full of energy, full of vitality, strong, resilient, we have joy, we have peace, we are content. How often do we really feel that? And so we want to then, I'm going to go ahead and share here, talk about what might disrupt that. And I'm going to go back here, share my screen with you. There we go. The contributing factors that might disrupt our health and well-being. And that just begins right away with our modern diet is one of the contributing factors. There's multiple factors that may contribute. The first and foremost, because this is something we do every day, is our modern diet. It is so full of processed foods, refined foods, unhealthy foods, fast foods, and then of course loaded with excess sugar. So this is one of the contributing factors that maybe have us so we're not getting the nutrients that we need to have the health and vitality. Another would be our lifestyle. We live a very sedentary lifestyle and we're not as active as we used to be. Maybe we're stuck at desks or screens all day, or we get home at the end of the day and we're on the sofa because we're just too tired, or we're quickly trying to get dinner ready, and then we get to bed and then we get up and the next day we do it again. So our lifestyles and habits and things that we have for coping with all the stresses can be a big contributing factor to disruptions in our health and well-being. And sleep would be another one. Sleep is something that we're not getting what we should. Sleep is where rest and regenerative, restorative, relaxation, all of that takes place, detoxification, when we're getting that restorative sleep. And we need at least 7 to 8 hours of that quality restorative sleep. And we're ending up not getting that because we're getting to bed too late, or the screens are disturbing our sleep cycle, and we're just not getting the sleep like we used to. And environmental toxins that we're exposed to now in our modern world. Every day we're exposed to toxins from our food, our water, the air we breathe, the chemicals that we're exposed to with personal care products or cleaning products. Thousands and thousands of toxins and pollution we're exposed to every single day. And now added to that is the increase in the radiation that we're exposed to with our EMFs, the electrical magnetic fields, things like our cell phones and our laptops, the 5G, the Wi-Fi. All of this is very stressing to our body and can cause disruption in our health and well-being. And of course, stress that we were talking about. Really, all of these are stressors to our body, but we have the stress that we know as psychological stress, like our emotional, mental, day-to-day stressors, maybe any trauma stress that we might be carrying with us, and any physical stressors. So these are all things that can contribute to disturbances in our health, the quality of our health and our well-being, contributing factors. And we're going to come back to this because this is really what the evening is about, that we're going to talk about is the microbiome and our digestive health. So we're going to come back to that. What happens is when we have all these things happening to our body coming at us every day, we really weren't designed to carry that much stress on our body. We have what we call a total stress load, and it becomes a body burden, and we start breaking down. And we have chronic inflammation going on because of all these stressors, oxidative stress, nutritional deficiencies, and this starts leading to things like illness and dis-ease and accelerated aging. Now, this doesn't happen without first initial symptoms. Maybe we might have things like pain or a headache or sleep disturbances. These are initial symptoms that are really, I use the analogy of, it's like driving our car around rusting, on fire, and out of gas. And the vehicle will eventually break down when it gets to that point, but not without first giving us the check engine light. So really, initial symptoms in our body are kind of like our check engine light. Our body is trying to tell us there's something out of balance here. There's something going on. There's some disturbances in our systems. And if we leave that unchecked, then it advances to intermediate type diseases or illnesses. And these can be things like allergies or digestive issues, a little more advanced. And again, if we leave it unchecked, it continues to advance. It's a broken down system or imbalanced system trying to run, and it can't. So it'll keep trying because the body is amazing. And if we give it what it needs, it can do it. But we're leaving these symptoms unchecked. And sometimes with the Western conventional medicine model, that does end up happening because we may go to the doctor with initial symptoms of pain or sleep disturbances. And then typically we're given medication because that's how the model is designed to treat a symptom and not necessarily correct and heal that symptom or get to the root cause as to why do we have that symptom. So in some ways it kind of masks and put a band-aid on it. It does maybe give us some temporary relief, but it doesn't get to resolving the problem on why we have this in the first place, and leaves it unchecked. And or if we are not doing any changes to correct and heal addressing the inflammation and the oxidative stress and any nutritional deficiencies that we may have. So these are contributing factors that, again, have it so we don't have maybe that health and well-being that we're seeking. So back to the digestive health and the microbiome. Really, that's why I put that in there as its own little highlight, because how we feel from head to toe is determined by the health of our digestive tract. And scientific research is revealing the importance of the gut, its bacterial inhabitants, our microbiome, which is what it's called, and how they communicate via the genetic code in their DNA. See, the human body has trillions of microbiotas, and they outnumber our cells 1 to 10. They live in our body, with the vast majority of them residing in our digestive tract. The digestive tract breaks down food to make it easier to absorb and metabolize. The microbes help digest and metabolize the food content we cannot, as well as release absorbable nutrients, metabolites, and waste products. So they play a very key role in our health and how we feel. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight, is how that works and why that works, but just even understanding that we have that many microbiotas in our body. It's like they have their own little ecosystem living in our body, and we are their host. And they determine how we feel. And we're going to look at how that's connected to our brain. After all, this is a holistic approach to our health, and our brain, body, we are all one. So the bacteria on the digestive tract is critical to how the gut functions. There are two types of gut biota. There's the beneficial bacteria, or the friendly, the good bacteria, as they call it. And this healthy bacteria, intestinal biofilm, promotes nutrient absorption and help eliminate unhealthy factors. This affects every system in your body, helping to promote energy levels, support your mood, a healthy weight, mental clarity, and proper immune function. The healthy, good bacteria, they love and thrive in an environment that's very clean, alkaline, healthy, fertilized with good, healthy, nutritious food, whole, real food, fiber, and prebiotic foods, and oxygen. This is what they thrive in, and they are supposed to be the bacteria that have the upper hand in this whole ecosystem. And when they have that type of environment, they do thrive. However, an excess of the bad bacteria, or the unfriendly, such as yeast or candida, may lead to increased weight, mental lethargy, inflammation, weakened immune, and overall decline in our systemic health. This is where I really catch people when we're looking at the difference with what's going on in our gut. So common symptoms of having excess bad bacteria, where they have the upper hand, would be things like fatigue, allergies, food sensitivities, chronic infections like colds or sinus infections, joint and muscle pain, brain fog, anxiety, depression, constipation or diarrhea, digestive disorders like irritable bowel, and sleep disturbances. These are just a few of a huge list of symptoms that can develop when the unfriendly bacteria have the upper hand and have kind of taken over. Now, they like to live, their environment is very toxic, sludgy, no oxygen, very acidic, this is an environment that they thrive in. Kind of says a lot about our gut health and what we're exposed to, doesn't it? So when we have that going on, this is when we have health issues. And again, it's chronic inflammation that can lead to systemic imbalances and systemic inflammation. And so you can see that inflammation that we just looked at really starts in the gut. And this is how it starts, by the bad bacteria having the upper hand. So we'll talk a little bit more in a moment here about how that happens and what factors contribute to that. But let's first look at the gut-brain link. So the gut is highly involved with neurotransmitters such as dopamine and serotonin, the chemicals that allow nerve cells to communicate with each other and the body. Dopamine is the major neurotransmitter, and a deficiency can lead to neurodegenerative disorders such as Parkinson's disease. While 50% of the dopamine in the body is found in the brain, the other 50% is found in the gut. And serotonin is the major neurotransmitter involved in mood. It's our feel-good neurotransmitter, and that's what lifts our spirits or has us feeling good when we have good serotonin. Well, 95% of serotonin is made and found in the gut, only 5% in the brain. There are more than 30 active neurotransmitters found throughout the enteric nervous system, underlying its importance and interconnection with the central nervous system. Many experts consider the gut to be equivalent of a second brain. I've actually been following and use a protocol of an integrative neurologist, and she takes it a step further. It is not that long ago when science started looking at this connection and this interconnection and called then the gut our second brain. But she suggests, because so much of it starts in the gut and there is that equal, if not more, communication that begins from the gut to the brain, that it is all one. It is not separate. There isn't brain one, brain two. It's all one, and it is connected by the vagus nerve here. The microbiome plays a critical role in metabolism. The microbes generate metabolites that can serve as neurotransmitters, hormones, and other products that have bioactive properties. The interplay between the gut, microbiome, and the brain is striking. The direction of communication is even more remarkable. Although we like to think our brains are in charge, the majority of communication doesn't flow from the brain to the gut, but in the other direction. It's actually a two-way highway, and most of it's going from the gut to the brain. The vagus nerve, also known as a cranial nerve 8, is the major nerve connecting the brain and the gut. Over 80% of the communication via the vagus nerve is transmitted through the vagus nerve, so, or from the gut to the brain. So back to that neurologist, and you can see how then everything is connected and where this all starts. So it's all one brain, and she actually even suggests that things like the neurodegenerative disorders like Parkinson's, MS, they start in the gut before it ever gets to the point where it's a neurodegenerative or neurological disease. So that I thought was very, very fascinating to me, and it really helped me to see and understand the whole picture and how important it is for us to really pay attention as to what's going on and treat it all as one. Another thing I forgot to say as we were beginning here, that please feel free, because I'm going to just do this more of a discussion just because of the topic, and I didn't want to make it too scientific and boring and slides and things like that. In fact, I'll even get out of here now with this screen sharing because we've seen enough of the two-way highway. I'm going to pause share. And then how do I get back into just the stop share? Can you guys see me?
Yep.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't hitting wrong buttons and that I lost everyone. I'm still here. So I meant to mention this at the beginning when we first started. If you can, please feel free to ask any questions or put a question in a chat that you might have as we go along, because it is kind of complicated and I start going off down different trails here when I'm thinking of something because it's just so fascinating and it's so interconnected. And sometimes I forget to touch on something that I really wanted to talk about. So if you have questions to remind me, like detoxing or probiotics and things like that and how that all affects it. I think it's easier to have a discussion and if you can just share questions with me. So there we are, the vagus nerve, the longest nerve in our body, and it plays a key role in our health and well-being. So what are the contributing factors that disrupt imbalances to our healthy microbiome that give us what we call a stressed gut? Well, just like what we first started with, there we go. There's that diet again, that modern diet and all that excess sugar. The environmental toxins, especially medication, is extremely stressing to the gut. Illness, sleep, lack of sleep, tap water, excess alcohol, caffeine, all these kinds of things, artificial sweeteners are very, very disrupting and stressing to our gut. And what happens is we end up having what we call a chronic low inflamed gut. And over time, when that stays that way, it starts making so that our intestinal lining becomes very permeable. And then things like undigested food or some of these toxins or the waste from the unhealthy microbiome, because they are organisms, they do have waste, can leak out then through the intestinal lining and get into our bloodstream, and they call that a leaky gut. So now the body is starting to look at it as pathogens, and here we go, and it triggers that inflammatory response. So that's what we mean by the stressed gut. And not only do we have the inflammation going on there, and now it's circulating in our body, but it can cross then, because of the connection that you saw, the blood-brain barrier and get to the brain. So now we have what we call a leaky brain, because it's one whole brain as we are seeing. And so if you have a leaky gut, you have leaky brain. And then we have that chronic inflammation going on in the brain as well. And again, that's where some of these neurodegenerative disorders, diseases start stemming from, is that chronic inflammation that's going on in the brain. And when the gut is in this stressed out state, the stressed gut, it's actually called, really, if you think about it, this neurologist referred to it as brain damage, because look how much the gut is involved with the communication to the actual brain. And so if there's damage in the gut, inflammation going on in the gut, disorders and imbalances and dysfunction in the gut, that's really creating brain damage. So you can see how critical it is for us to really pay attention and start with our health by addressing what's going on in our digestive tract. what's going on in the gut, and taking that holistic approach to a multifaceted approach to reset and heal the gut. So before we go any further as to how do we do this, any tips on how we do that? Do we have any questions or thoughts on what we have talked about so far? Or does this make sense? And this light right in my face, I'm going to try to change that a little. I can't tell. Any questions, comments, thoughts?
Feel free to briefly unmute if you'd like, or you can put it in the chat.
I put something in the chat.
Did you mention tap water as a negative?
Tap water. Yeah.
Even here in Duluth, are we?
Yeah, so I'm gonna back that up a little bit, because when I was saying yes, thank you. I don't want to just breeze through it so fast, because there are these things that are just, it's a combination of everything. So yes, I did say tap water. And here's why. Tap water in general, no matter where you are, what do they add to it?
Well, any number of things, I'm sure. Chlorine.
Yeah. Chlorine, there you go. You got it, ding. Chlorine, of course, and fluoride. And what does the chlorine do? What is the purpose of adding chlorine to our water? To kill the
Bacteria, I suppose.
Yep. And what did we just learn is in our gut? Because we have the good bacteria, we don't want to kill them. And that's what happens. So this, along with the medications, which is huge, because what's one of the most commonly prescribed medications? Probably over prescribed here. Antibiotics. Yeah, that's one of the key things, because what do antibiotics do?
Well, they kill a pathogen that's infecting you.
Right. But they don't know how to differentiate when they go into your system and say, oh, yes, they're targeted for a specific one, and they can be life-saving. I'm not saying that. So they're very important, but they don't do it without wiping out everything. So they wipe out the beneficial bacteria big time. And then just even regular medication can do that. It's very hard on the gut. They get destroyed in the process. It's a big impact on them. So yes, medications, environmental toxins, water, definitely. But that's not all the chlorine. There's so many other contaminants as well. And though they make them so they're just smaller particles, and they say, well, if that small amount, it doesn't matter. Over time it does, because all these things that we're doing to our gut or to our health are cumulative. It's cumulative. And there are a lot of I think if you look at the Environmental Working Group website, I think there were 7 different things where Duluth was at a higher amount than it should be in the per particles allowed for safe. They were in the higher range.
What is the recommended substitute then for our tap water?
Well, filtration is good then to consider. So a good water filtration system, especially for the drinking water. Now, I do things for myself, like even my skin, and I can tell because of course the skin is our largest organ. And so when you take a shower or a bath, you're absorbing it through your skin. So I even have a water filter for the shower and the bath. And you can tell, you can feel the difference. It's not dried out. And I can smell the difference too. It's very interesting. So water filtration system, be that one that you can get to hook up to your tap. Some of the new pitchers are becoming more effective. They weren't always. They used to just reduce or eliminate the smell, but they weren't actually removing it. So the best is really reverse osmosis for removing contaminants, all of them, the particles. But then you have to make sure that you have for remineralizing, because it's also taking out the good minerals that we need from our water.
Okay,
So, you know, it's a good place to start something, at least start with the drinking water and go there. And you don't have to overhaul. But thank you. Does that answer your question? Yeah, great. Other thoughts, comments when I kind of just breezed through that really fast?
There is a comment in the chat, or I'm sorry, a question. How does COVID affect the gut, or does it?
Well, this is interesting that you say this because, or that's a great question, because it's something that I really was fascinated with and went into research on how COVID works. And as we know, it's inflammatory. It creates that cytokine storm, the spike protein. That's what it's doing, is getting into the cell, and then it goes into this storm of inflammation. So if we have inflammation going on already, especially when it starts in the gut, which that's what it is for a lot of this, and in the metabolism is one of the big ones. You may have heard that it's for high blood pressure. It really hits hard with high blood pressure, blood sugar imbalances, diabetes. So this then, if this is going on because of inflammation and all of a sudden a COVID virus comes along and it's going in then and creating an actual storm in what was already a small storm brewing and blows it up. So the answer to that from me, I mean, my opinion is, yeah, it really impacts. I have noticed, or what I have seen when people share their experiences, or when you read or the research, is it seems to go to the most vulnerable part of your body. But chronic inflammation is the underlying root cause. So for some people, if that's inflammation within the nervous system, maybe excess inflammation more and their nervous system is impacted, it feels like then it hit the nervous system, but it was kind of all over the map. So respiratory, but because everything does start in the gut, the digestive, and to even have a neurologist say neurodegenerative disease starts in the gut. That's really the first place we should look when we're trying to achieve optimum health and healing. We should start there. Other comments, questions?
Yep, there's another. Can changing your diet reverse disease, specifically stomach cancer, or can the stressed gut cause stomach cancer?
Well, yes and yes. I believe yes and yes. Again, everything's starting there. The systemic inflammation is where these diseases are coming from, but the systemic inflammation comes off of the initial gut inflammation, the stressed gut. So yes, then, if that's what's going on, can we reverse, or can we slow? Absolutely. Like I had mentioned earlier when we began with, well, what is wellness? What is healing? What is vitality? What is resilience? If we give our body what it needs, it's amazing. All these systems that are working so hard for us to keep us in homeostasis, to keep us balanced and healthy and strong, they just need their tools. They need that gas. And they don't need to be rusting and on fire. Get them working synergistically together. And yes, we can. And that is actually what we were going to talk about next then, is by restoring balance and healing the gut. This is key to optimum health. We need to do that by shifting the biochemistry of the gut. In other words, don't let the unfriendly bacteria have that upper hand. We'll slowly shift that biochemistry and then reset the nervous system at the same time. For some of you, I did see a couple names that I recognized actually, maybe from previous classes, maybe it was the one last fall, but I did one last fall for Whole Foods Co-op that was called Reset the Nervous System, which really is where this one came from next, because this was brought up during that one, during that class. If we reset our nervous system and we shift the biochemistry of our gut at the same time, work on that at the same time, that is where you have a shift in your well-being. Think of it as that vagus nerve where you saw the two-way highway. It's dysregulated right now. And if we reset the nervous system, calm the nervous system, like rebooting our computer, and we talked about how to do that during that class, that was the stress thing. And then we work on the gut stuff, healing the gut, restoring and balancing and healing the gut, then everything comes online. It's like rebooting our computer, and then the cable, reset, unplug, turn it back on again. That's really what we're doing with the brain gut connection and healing that way. So because if we have then a stressed gut, it would really be considered a hostile environment. And we don't want to go in and start detoxing and throwing in probiotics and hope that everything takes care of itself. It really doesn't work that way. That's kind of doing it backwards. If it's a hostile environment, we have to ease in, we have to prime it, we have to prepare for the shift and address any underlying conditions that may be going on as well. Maybe it's ulcers, maybe there's parasites, maybe there's, gut conditions already like diverticulitis or some of these others. We have to address those first. So when we do healing in holistic health, in integrative health, I like to do it in 3 stages. The first stage is relief care, because we can't go forward and start correcting and healing until we have relief. And as we heard by that list earlier of all the symptoms that are happening when we have an imbalanced, stressed out gut, we need to get relief from that first, or it's really going to be hard to correct. You're jumping ahead of it. And how do you get relief? Well, if the underlying root cause is inflammation, the first thing we want to do is reduce that inflammation. Sometimes even making a few shifts in reducing that inflammation can start bringing benefits and relief right away. I've had people who notice less pain, more energy, and that's just in the initial getting going with it. So that's how we would begin with restoring balance and healing the gut, is we want to reduce the inflammation. And how do we do that? Well, yes, diet is key. Diet would be key to this. It's actually a major player, major factor in it, because nutrition is what's nourishing the good bacteria, if that's what we're giving them. We want to nourish the good bacteria. We want that alkaline environment. We want to, it's like fertilizing your garden and preparing the garden bed. We wouldn't go out and start planting in seeds if we have a very acidic, oh, this is a good one, yeah, acidic garden bed that's got things that they just wouldn't thrive in. We have to prepare it. We have to till it, fertilize it, and prepare it. That's what we would do with our nutrition. And I can't think of anything better, that goes across the board for everything, whether it's anti-cancer, weight loss, any of this is a anti-inflammatory diet, a clean, healthy, whole foods, anti-inflammatory diet. Healthy fats, fiber. We don't digest the fiber, but the microbiota, the bacteria, that they do, and that's what they need. And we're really deficient in this. So a healthy, whole foods, balanced diet based on anti-inflammatory, have that be the key. And the handouts that Jen will be mailing or emailing to you at the end of the class here today, that is in there, along with some other tips for resetting and restoring health to the gut. So there's a anti-inflammatory diet lifestyle handout, lists of foods to avoid the inflammation, and then a couple of other handouts that may be helpful. So yes, I hope that answers the question, because I have seen incredible changes for people, transformation and healing when they go in and address the gut, and they begin with a diet. And the first thing they do is adopt an anti-inflammatory clean diet, eliminating those inflammatories. Does that answer the question?
I think that did. That was wonderful. Next comment or question. With today's diet much different than that of our grandparents in terms of processed foods, what is your opinion on the use of digestive enzymes as digestive aid?
Thank you so much for these questions. That's why I'm glad we're doing it this way, because I had wanted to talk about that and I didn't put it in my outline. So thank you for whoever just asked that question. You are absolutely right. And the number one thing with our diet that is causing the stressed gut and all these health issues is the processed food, the ultra processed, refined foods, if you can even call them foods, food. That is definitely what is causing this. And so what is suggested is to change that and go back to more of a whole foods, real food diet, anti-inflammatory, because the processed foods are probably one of the biggest inflammatory foods that we can do. So that's one of the first things. If you're going to eliminate anything for now to begin with, is the processed foods, and adopt a whole foods diet again and watch what happens as we do that. So if you're doing that, as you know, the whole foods, like your grandparents and great grandparents, the way they used to eat, the enzymes are in the food. So we don't have to do this. So when people say, if we're having distress, really, we can't have health-killing habits and expect a pill or a supplement to fix it. It's almost kind of doing the same thing as medication, but with a nutraceutical instead. Now, can it be helpful for relief? Absolutely. I do enzymes myself when I'm needing them for relief, if I've eaten things that are not, and it helps my body to break it down. But again, there's a hostile environment in there going on, so we don't want to it might help a little bit, but it doesn't fix it. It doesn't solve or restore. So it's a yes and no question. I mean, answer is yes and no. It does provide the relief, and it's a natural option for relief while we're shifting the biochemistry of the gut. So thank you. I really wanted, same applies to the probiotic. We don't want to go and have this hostile environment and then we go and take a probiotic because they say it's good for us. They're so big right now, that people even know about probiotics, and it's so common. Like you can just talk, it wasn't that way even a decade ago. And then just throw a probiotic in there, we're really throwing those bacteria into a hostile environment. So will it help a little bit? Yes. But tomorrow, then we're kind of still back in the same saddle if we have not changed anything, if we have not changed the biochemistry of the gut. So then once we do, and the gut starts healing, and we're moving forward and we're shifting that, and you can tell and you can feel, basically you're preparing and you're priming the garden. Now you can start repopulating with a good probiotic. And then we want to make sure that we feed them, fertilize them. So it's kind of like our gardens. And if you notice in gardens, if we don't prepare it, and then we don't water and feed them in a healthy way, I don't know about you, but I usually get a lot of weeds. And so that's really kind of what's happening with our microbiome in the gut, is the unfriendly come up if we're not correcting it and creating a healthy environment for them to thrive. So another way to repopulate the gut with good bacteria is fermented foods, sauerkraut, kimchi, kefir, yogurt. Again, though, we want good, healthy yogurt. We want yogurt best if grass-fed and plain yogurt, because a lot of the yogurts out there are filled with sugar and other things. So then we're end up feeding the wrong bacteria. It's counterproductive. So an organic, grass-fed, if you're going to do the yogurt kefir route, if possible, so you don't counteract all your good efforts that you're doing. And then the 4 pillars of health, which will be in your handouts, are nutrition, our diet, and exercise. We need that physical activity. We have to get things moving. Don't forget, we have a elimination system, the lymph system, and it all works together. So back to the cancer question. Yes, it may start there with the systemic inflammation, but then we have the toxins going in our body if we have a damaged intestinal lining. And between the inflammation and these toxins circulating, you can see how it would be a trigger for cancer to grow. So we want to make sure that we're moving our lymph and that we're creating all the elimination channels open and clear for naturally detoxifying our body and begin by reducing the amount of toxins that we're exposing it to in the first place. And exercise is a wonderful tool for doing this, for moving, and as well as the oxygen that it loves too, and balancing the hormones and the moods, because the serotonin, remember, is made in the gut. And when we exercise and have physical activity, that's really, really good for serotonin uptake. And sleep, that's really good to make sure we're getting that restorative sleep every night so the body can heal and repair and detoxify, allowing time for it to do this. And de-stressing is the 4th on the 4 pillars of health. And like I said, we had done the Reset the Nervous System in the fall. It was a wonderful class because that alone, I think stress is probably one of the biggest factors of a stressed gut or damage to our gut lining. Because when we become stressed emotionally, this directly affects our intestines and the microbes that line our gut wall. If we are frustrated by a traffic jam, worried about a loved one, or building up tension in a busy day, our bodies release stress hormones such as cortisol and norepinephrine, and these are the same hormones we need in dangerous fight or flight situations. But for everyday stress, when we stay there, that's usually overkill. And that can throw our ecology of our gut right out of whack. It's probably one of the biggest things. And in our modern world, not only are we doing the processed foods, but we're staying in the fight or flight mode. We stay stuck in it. So I think addressing the root causes of a stressed gut are important. And again, beginning with the diet and then the 4 pillars of the health. But de-stressing and finding ways to reset and calm the nervous system and get out of the fight or flight is critical, because again, otherwise it can be counterproductive. If you are, and so that's that 2-part that we were talking about, addressing the biochemical stuff, and then the psychoenergetic would be the emotional stress, the nervous system at the same time. Because what if you're trying to eat really healthy and you're trying to get your exercise in and you're making efforts to have a good quality night's sleep, but we have the stress stuck on and we aren't doing things to help calm our nervous system and reset our nervous system, then all these other things kind of get counteracted and or they don't work. And I notice people get very frustrated. Like, well, I am doing all these things to sleep, but I'm still waking up, or I'm having a hard time falling asleep. They're having sleep disturbances. Well, that's because the stress, if we haven't addressed that, the psychoenergetic stuff is keeping that going. And as you can see, the gut is dealing with that. The stress hormones are up, and all the health markers of inflammation or anti-inflammatory, our immune system support, they're all down. They get suppressed when we are in a stress state, stressed gut. We may host them. Okay, I was just reading what that said. I thought maybe there was a question. How is this?
There is
this
a question about prebiotic foods.
Yes.
I'm wondering if that's good for gut health.
Yes. So so it's kind of back to that garden thing again. We want to get it ready, prepare, prime, and then we want to fertilize it, which would be the diet, and then repopulate and feed the probiotics. Feed the microbiome. We want to feed them, and prebiotics are what help them it's what they feed and what they grow on. And prebiotics, besides some of the fiber, would be things like garlic, onions, artichoke, chicory root, things that you can find that are part of a healthy diet, a whole foods diet, and incorporating that in to make sure that the microbiome is getting plenty of that. So yes, it's a balanced approach. And the healthy foods do as well. Again, especially the fiber. Any other thoughts or questions about this? Or I don't know if I mentioned this, but I want to one more time put that out about as we begin, we want to make sure that we prime and ease into shifting. We don't want to go and do a big detox, because chances are with the hostile environment, it's a real stress load on our immune system. Oh, by the way, the gut houses 75% of our immune system. Now we know why, because of the microbiome. And if we have systemic inflammation going on and our body is burdened, as you can see already, and all of a sudden we go and do a detox because we're ready and we're going to do this and we're going to fix our gut, that could actually really be dangerous, and you don't want to do this. And so oftentimes you see people doing 7-day, 14-day detox programs, and it can end up backfiring and make you feel worse, because toxins are dumping into a system that isn't able to handle it. You have to make sure your elimination systems are working. We have to make sure the inflammation is down a little bit so the body is able to handle. That's why I like to do it in stages and to ease into shifting the biochemistry. I'm trying to see if there was one more question. All right. So I
There
know
is, hi, Michelle, sorry. There is
That's
a question about fiber supplements.
yes.
If that is a good source of fiber.
Well, it depends on what you're thinking of as a fiber supplement. I am big about food as medicine, and I always feel that it's best to get your fiber from food. And we're very deficient. It's one of the, besides the D and the magnesium, fiber is one of the nutrients that we are so deficient in, most of us, and we should be getting at least 25, 30 grams of fiber every day. But here's the thing, if you change your diet and you eat some of those things that are on your anti-inflammatory list, I mean, things like vegetables and fruits have naturally built-in fiber. And we want to, I'm going to share something with you again. We want to, can you see that on the screen?
Yep.
Okay, good. So now you're getting it from the foods. Now, if you feel it's necessary, but if you're eating some of these things like vegetables, the legumes, seeds, the leafy greens, the oatmeal, those are all full of fiber. You're going to be getting it. And it shouldn't be necessary if you're eating or if you're getting getting it from your foods. So you can see some of the things on the inflammatory foods. And and there we go. The standard American diet on your right-hand side, though we have people from other countries here, it looks like. This is really great. Yes, the standard American diet. A lot of the processed foods, there you are, the excess sugar, all of these are pro-inflammatory. They make this low-grade chronic inflammation stay in the gut, or go along the gut lining, and over time, that's what damages that. So by shifting, and you want to go slow on that too. Same thing with the enzymes that you had talked about earlier. Many of these foods on the anti-inflammatory list are chock full of the enzymes that we need. But if your gut is in a real hostile, vulnerable state, we have to even ease in with that. So you want to, maybe even when you begin and start shifting to an anti-inflammatory foods, to actually saute or cook just a little bit to help break it down, because we don't have the enzymes in place yet to do that. And it can be real hard when we're all of a sudden dumping in these other foods that the gut is not used to. So help it by steaming or sauteing just to begin with for the first stage as you go into the corrective healing part of it. Okay. That is what I was going to share. Now I'm going to stop sharing. And again, those lists are in the handouts too. So I think just summarizing what we talked about, how important it is. Now we see and understand why, to address the health of our digestive tract, our gut, and that by doing that, we really can shift how we feel from head to toe and have that optimum health and well-being. You can even shift and slow and maybe even reverse diseases and illnesses just by getting to the bottom of that. It is important, though, I do want to put this out there as a disclaimer, to make sure you're working with a medical professional, a healthcare professional, especially one that understands, because again, if there are any other underlying, we're all bio-individual, we all have individual things going on. There's thousands of different strains of microbiomes in our body, especially in the gut. And they're all different for all of us. And we want to make sure that, that we're dealing with this, because we deal with it individually, and we all may individually be dealing with something else. So it's not a one size fits all. It's not a one probiotic and a one do this. Anti-inflammatory is just kind of a standard that's an overall great healthy diet to follow. But for some people who have food sensitivities, there's things on that list that maybe you can't have that right now, or you want to be mindful of it, like the nightshades. So just keep that in mind. It's not here's a protocol, go out and follow it, but it is a one that can really make a difference if you customize it to fit your individual needs and health concerns.
There was one more question about infrared sauna and floating and whether or not that could help.
Huh. I have to show you. Look at, that's what's right behind me. An infrared sauna. That is my infrared sauna. Yes, so good for detoxification, so many health benefits. And I didn't know. I mean, I had heard about it, read about it, in my practice. And then when I actually personally began using it, I see so many different benefits on so many levels. But I think the big thing is the immune support is huge, and I can tell the difference. People around me getting sick, whether it's COVIDs or colds or flus, and I don't know, I just really feel that that's been a big part of my immune system boosting protocol. And so yes, major benefits to this. Floats, you mean as in the float tanks? Would that be?
Yes.
Okay. Float tanks are really beneficial for definitely the nervous system. So yes, things like this for resetting the nervous system, relaxing, detoxifying, can be very beneficial for this as well. And again, we want to be doing these things at the same time. So any of these therapies and self-care practices that you can do that support those 4 pillars of health: nutrition, exercise, sleep, and de-stressing, will benefit you. I hope that answered.
Someone has asked, could you explain what an infrared sauna is?
I was afraid that was going to come up because I kind of know how they work, but I don't know how to technically explain it, other than it's not the hot air that's heating us up like a traditional sauna. It is infrared heating units that go deeply penetrate the muscle and the tissue to heat our body up this way, not breathing in the hot air and heating us up with hot air around us, but rather directly going into the muscle and the tissue. I know it's not a very technical explanation, but that's how it works. I know they use it like at Mayo and in sports medicine because it's very good for muscle repair, joint pain. So I think it's that deeper penetrating heat. And it doesn't use water, so you're not getting the steam. You actually just plug it in. Yeah, it is different because you heat up, but almost from the inside out is what it feels like when it does that. I suppose that is different. I've gotten used to it though. Red infralight. That I don't know enough about to speak on. I've heard of it and the benefits from it, but I do not know enough about it to speak on the red infrared light. You are welcome. And I think, are we getting towards the end here? I can't tell with my light on where we are. As we get ready to wrap up, I wanted to just review with you, a few of the things that we talked about, and I would encourage you to think about doing this for yourself, and it doesn't have to be major. Just these small changes can have huge benefits. But I would say the biggest takeaway to remember is that we want to do, when we talk about biochemical or biology or biochemistry, we're talking about the gut. So yes, of course, we want to address this and do that with the diet and with the exercise and addressing any underlying inflammation and sleep and de-stressing. Definitely, that would be key. And you will notice big benefits to it. But also to remember that we want to, at the same time, with the nervous system, which is part of it, as you saw with the gut, resetting that and addressing any psychoenergetic issues. And what I mean by that is any emotional, mental, because again, if we have any underlying trauma, or if we have some, chronic emotional, mental things happening in our life, it is very important to be addressing that too, because our bodies hold on to that. It's energy, and when we hold it in our body, it's like mass. It spreads like mass in our body, and we want to be able to move that, whether it's fear or anger or anxiety. Any of this stuff that we're holding in our body, it's really important that we're addressing that and doing things for that as well, especially with the, the calming the nervous system, because stress is okay, but staying stuck in stress is very hazardous to your health. So the takeaway would be, for optimum health and well-being, definitely start with the gut, but do it at the same time with resetting the nervous system. And so if there aren't any other questions or comments that you might have, I want to just take a moment and thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedules. And I know many of you are probably looking at screens all day long. And so to get on and have, which can be stressing, have another hour and a half of looking at a screen again, becomes long, and it takes commitment. And if you find yourself here and that you were interested in learning more about this because maybe you want to do some things to feel better, I invite you to give yourself a pat on the back. And this is a great start. And I can reassure you, it doesn't take much to shift that biochemistry and start feeling better.
Thank you, Michelle. That was a wonderful class, terrific presentation. I hope everybody was able to get all of the information. Michelle, would you maybe want to put your contact information in the chat just in case anybody needs a follow-up question answered or anything like that?
Sure.
Perfect.
I can do that before we leave here. I
included my email address, so for anybody who is hoping to get the recording from tonight, please let me know. That would be terrific. See, a couple have already sent me information, so that's great. Thank you so much. So for the person who thought the class was going till 7:30, yeah, I had it scheduled till 7:30. That was my mistake. So I apologize for that. But
did we start at the right time, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Nope, I just
And I
scheduled it for
always
2
like-
hours.
Oh my. And I always like to leave time for, going up till 7 if we need to, for those questions and answers, which really became such a big part of and an important part of tonight's class. Because again, it's a topic that can be complex, but sometimes much easier in this discussion format. Okay.
Indeed, definitely. Well, I just want to say thank you again, everybody, for attending tonight's class and for your participation. Definitely opened up some new avenues of information that we didn't have otherwise. So that was wonderful. Again, check out all of our upcoming classes. We are scheduled through April currently, but I actually have more classes available through May. So we'll be going through that. Thank you, Michelle, for adding your email. So it's holistichealthhealing@gmail.com if you have any follow-up questions that you'd like to have answered. And after we wrap up, I will email everybody the handouts that Michelle had prepared. So looking forward to sending that out soon. Everyone have a wonderful evening. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here. Have a good night.
All right, for one more time, if you are looking to get the recording, please email me directly. That would be nice. So it's J. Gilbertson at wholefoods.coop. And it's in the chat again. So if you can make a note of that and email me, it just is a lot easier for me to do it that way versus trying to copy and paste everybody else's emails. All right, so with that, thank you, Michelle. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful night.